Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 85 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Beckson. Today, we're going to be talking with Luigi Wewege. Luigi is actually a banker, the president of Caye International Bank in Belize. So it's the first time we've had a banker on the podcast, so this should be very, very interesting. We're going to be discussing about what's happening in the Central American market for also expats, and also about opening bank accounts for expats and financing as well. I know quite a few people here in Costa Rica constantly ask me about that. But his bank, Caye International Bank, actually finances up to 50% of the loan value of properties here in Costa Rica as well. So, and typically I think it's rates between 6 to 11%, which is a little higher than what you'd get in North America. But as I like to say, there's always a cost to living in paradise. But so we're going to be talking to him, asking him and getting his feedback on the pros and cons of kind of banking in certain jurisdictions, how it works, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, guys, if anyone has any questions or would like to talk directly with us, you can. It's info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. We help people basically make the right investment here in Costa Rica. I think you can look online at our reviews and you'll also see that, anyone that we end up working with, we're always looking after their best interests and not really kind of pushing them to buy anything. We would like to get a clear idea of what their goals are, whether it's a lifestyle goals or whether it's an investment goal, and then really kind of align that behind what they're trying to do. So again, that you can contact us, info@investingcostarica.com. But let's get straight into it. Good morning, Luigi. How are you doing?
Good, and you, mate. Thanks, Rich, for having me here.
No, it's my pleasure. I mean, we've had quite a few people from Panama on this, which I think is where you're currently based at the moment. But yeah. I know that you're in the world of banking, and I don't think we've actually had a banker on the podcast before. So it's an absolute pleasure to have our first one, and also a South African banker that spent quite a bit of time in Panama and Belize.
Indeed. Thank you.
It's been a crazy 2 years, Luigi. I mean, I don't know how your business has been over the 2 years, but I mean, what in the world has banking has surprised you?
Well, I mean, a number of things, I guess, have surprised me. I guess there's no actual reference point. I can't say anyone actually expected this, so, yep. Virtually everything was a surprise going forward. And let me first kind of start by going kind of micro, then macro, to explain from Caye's perspective in Belize. I was quite surprised at how agile and how fast we could actually move as a bank. For example, we had several year plans for certain things, which I think secretly some board members thought would even take longer than that. But, because of the pandemic, we were literally implementing in weeks, if not days. And, from kind of a macro perspective, everyone was concerned, obviously, for their respective businesses. But what happened for offshore banking, is that a number of people had wanted to actually open a bank account outside of their jurisdiction, but had not finalized the process. So then largely due to people saying that they didn't have the time to really, do the paperwork, but now being under lockdown at home, for in some cases many months, they now had the time and no excuse to actually make their bank account application. And added to that, the pandemic also made people realize that maybe, it was a really good time to get a second home overseas or another residency or passport. And that really, sparked the interest in banking offshore over the last 2 years or so.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, can you explain just a little bit like what your bank does and how it could potentially help, basically expats living in Costa Rica or Central America?
Yeah, I think, let me first start with giving a bit of a background of Caye and how it came into existence.
Yep.
It first started as a mortgage company in 1996.
Yep.
And then in 2003 became a fully licensed bank. I think what the founders realized quite early on was that North Americans were coming to Ambergris Caye Island in increasing numbers, and they would come to the island, have several margaritas and fall, absolutely in love with the place.
As one does.
As one does, margarita madness, and they would then call their bank in the USA and ask for financing, on a Belizean condo, which the American banker would invariably laugh at and say that was a complete no-go. Then they would walk into a local, like Belizean bank and ask for a mortgage, which they would then be told, you're not a Belizean citizen or resident. This, you can't be helped at all. And then that's essentially how Caye came into existence. We were able to help these people finance their dream apartment or house in Belize. So, we help expats in the region, not just from like a financing perspective, but for example, you're constructing a second home in Central America, and finding it difficult to, facilitate wires for certain payments in the region. So, from say your bank in North America, you could instead then open an account at Caye in Belize, which can facilitate your international wire payments throughout the region for you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty simple to wire money around Central America. I mean, do you guys have difficulty receiving money from North America, or is it a pretty simple process when people want to send money?
No, quite a simple process. So we actually have 2 solid correspondent banks in Puerto Rico that utilize a correspondent in Colorado. So many times when people are actually making that wire transfer, it's actually a domestic transfer for them. So it doesn't actually leave the confines of the US financial system. Yeah. So it's quite quick and quite efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it here. I mean, anyone that's in Central America that's looking for a bank account could open an account with you guys. They could easily transfer funds in and then use, I mean, I'm sure it comes with some form of debit card. You guys also do credit cards?
Debit card, we're working on a credit card solution. But yeah, think of it like, so the US financial system is like a 6-lane highway. It works, money zips in and out.
Yep.
It works pretty well. When those US dollars flow outside of the US financial system, it kind of essentially becomes a gravel road. And so, and so having kind of an international bank that's been doing this for many, many years helps, could potentially help your business offshore, or if you're trying to construct a home, just to be able to make those payments without hassles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know here in Costa Rica, sometimes it could be a nightmare to receive money. I mean, I've had money sent from the US to my bank here, and they basically want to know your shoe size. So yeah, I mean, I think once stuff falls under kind of more of a Central American jurisdiction, things are a little bit more lenient. I'm very aware of that, having transferred money between Panama and Costa Rica before. But I mean, you mentioned there about financing. I mean, would you look at financing anybody here that's looking to buy a property here in Costa Rica? What do those terms look like? How much do you like? Could you just give us a rough idea of what that looks like, so that anybody that's listening here that would be interested could reach out to you?
Yeah, no, we most certainly do. In fact, Costa Rica is one of our focus countries, along with Belize, Nicaragua, and Panama. So generally, you're looking at a loan to value of 50%. Interest rates of anywhere from 6 to 11%. The bank does have a sister company which is involved in these 4 countries I just listed. And for those properties, we can offer slightly different LTVs and interest rates. But we certainly do. We feel like, besides Belize, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Panama, we understand. We have people on the ground that can assess, certain land, property, and be able to tell us exactly, what this potential, financing is for, what it's worth. So.
Well, I think this is a great option for anybody that's looking, because I often get asked of, hey, are there any financing options available here in Costa Rica? And I would say from an institution like a bank here directly here in Costa Rica, I think it's very similar to what you were talking about there, when, North Americans would come down, have a few margaritas, want to buy a condo, go to a local bank, and the bank would basically be like, no, if you're not a resident or you're a citizen, you can't. And then North America would laugh at you. So this is a great option for anyone, because again, it's the same in Costa Rica. The banks are not going to lend to, foreigners that aren't residents or citizens here, and also sometimes private lending here can be, in excess of 15, 20%. So, I mean, while 6 to 11 may be slightly higher than what rates they're getting in the US, I mean, as I say, there's a cost of paradise, dude. Exactly. So, I mean, your wife works for a law firm in Panama. I mean, why do you think that people look to Panama to open bank accounts and also have corporations down there?
Well, I've started to notice people becoming a bit more multi-jurisdictional and focused of late. And what I mean by that is, say someone lives in Canada, they're then incorporating a company in Panama with a Belize corporate bank account that's say in US dollars or euros. So what they've actually done there is kind of an asset protection risk diversification play. In that, for example, say between Panama and Belize, that is now 2 different jurisdictions, 2 different legal systems, being common and civil law, and 2 different languages. So then, due to this person coming from a jurisdiction like I just mentioned, Canada, which uses Canadian dollars, but now he has an account in US dollars or euros. So you've kind of split your risk across a couple of things there. So I believe you've covered this previously in your podcast, but why people also tend to incorporate companies is if you have a Belizean property, you can place that title in a Panamanian company. So, if someone trips and falls and breaks their leg when they're renting your Airbnb, it becomes a much more difficult process for them to attempt any legal action against you. Also, many people incorporate to hold their property title in a corporation so that if you sell it one day, all they need to do is transfer the shares of the company to the new owner. So, also touching on your previous question, also financing with us is fairly easy in the sense where, obviously you incorporate a company, the bank obviously owns the company with the title in it, but once you've paid off financing, we transfer the shares to you and off you go with your property.
That's pretty standard. I love the idea of having a Panama corporation own, a property that's not in Panama as well. I think it just, again, as you mentioned, that kind of separates liability a little bit there, especially as you're using it as a rental, because, in the US, people love litigation. It's a little bit more difficult down here in Central America. It's possible, but you better have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's going to completely, of course, if something happens, it's going to completely shield you. It just makes the person essentially coming after you think twice whether they want to, get two sets of lawyers in Belize and Panama, for example, to start going after you with, two different languages, two different legal systems, etc. It's
definitely
it's going to be
two very different cultures.
Two different cultures, and two very different ways of going through the court system. So you have to be essentially really motivated at that point to go after that that individual. Yeah.
Who has the best beer, Belize or Panama?
They're pretty close. Belize has Belican. It's actually a fantastic beer. They've got several, all the way to kind of like a Guinness type beer, which is actually really good. Panama's Balboa actually reminds me a lot of South Africa's Black Label. They're actually both pretty good beers. So.
Which one's cheaper? I've never been to Belize, if you can believe it. If you can believe it.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to get it out there, dude. I had to get it out there.
Yeah, no, wow. I'd say possibly Belize, just a little bit cheaper. But it's not far off, because obviously Panama with the US dollars, and then Belize with Belize dollars, but it's pegged to the US dollar 2-to-1. So it's not like you're dealing with pesos or anything with kind of devaluation.
Definitely.
Yes, they're not that far off.
Of all the Central American countries, it sounds like you've got quite a bit of experience in them. Which of the countries do you think has the best opportunity for investors, and why?
Well, before answering that, you've just acknowledged you've never been to Belize. I actually want to say that I have actually been to Costa Rica, and it was actually one of the best experiences of my life. One day I went white water rafting down the Picara River. It was an unbelievable experience. And then that evening had dinner at one of the highest points of San Jose, overlooking the city. It was just an incredible day. It's like something I'd never forget. So I just wanted to also acknowledge being to Costa Rica. But sorry, I digress. From like an investor perspective, I'd say it all depends on your risk tolerance and what you're hoping to achieve. Costa Rica is considered one of the most developed countries in the region, with fairly solid infrastructure. So, Belize, for example, is, a relatively new country in the sense where, independence in late 1981, and still developing. So when you're still developing, it provides many more kind of investor opportunities. And then, like Panama, on the other hand, an entirely different prospect. US dollars as main currency. It has the canal, which, a substantial amount of revenue gets generated from. So, that's actually allowed the government to turn Panama City into a first world city. So, but with this development, that equates to Panama being at a different price point than the other jurisdictions in the region. So it really all depends on, the investment and what the investor hopes to achieve. That will kind of guide them to identify which country in Central America I think is right for them.
So do you spend most of your time in Panama or most of your time in Belize, or bouncing between the two?
Bounce a little bit, so obviously, like you mentioned, I live in Panama, due to my wife being a partner in a law firm here. Although I fly to Belize fairly often, It actually works out quite well because she'll often fly with me. She loves the island. She really enjoys being out on the boat there and fishing. And we actually met on Ambergris Caye Island, which is famously known by that Madonna song, La Isla Bonita.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow. I mean, let's talk about Panama a little bit. I mean, what do you like and what do you dislike about it?
Well, I mean, what I like about Panama is, as I mentioned before, the infrastructure, and it's essentially a first world city. Tucumán, which is the main international airport, is essentially a hub for the region, and so a lot of international flights in Latin America would fly in and connect through Panama. So this makes like traveling to other countries a lot easier in the region due to almost always being able to get a direct flight from Tucumán. So if you're trying to get to Cusco or Lima or Santiago, you're going to head to Panama City first, connect to another flight, and then be directed to your destination. So that's obviously quite a big positive for me. I travel fairly often, and another positive I would say is also the safety of the place. You'll almost find no petty crime incidents within the confines of the city. I guess another positive is the US dollar. I mean, that brings it brings stability. But at the same time, in saying that to you, like, it does essentially lead to a dislike because often I receive a comment from people that they were expecting for their US dollars to go a lot further here, but we're quite shocked when certain items were much more expensive here than in the USA.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the one thing that shocks a lot of people is they're just expecting Central America, Costa Rica, Panama, Belize, Nicaragua. I mean, Nicaragua is a lot cheaper, of course, than probably any of the countries, but, they were expecting, it to be cheap, and comparatively to the US, it's not. But I mean, there are certain things that we don't pay for here. Like, we don't have winter, so we don't have heating. I mean, I think, in Panama, you guys need the AC just because, it's very hot and humid down there. Here in San Jose, in the city, we're 3,000 feet above sea level here.
Yep.
It's 65 Fahrenheit at night and 85 during the day all year round. So we don't need AC here. So you don't have that bill.
There's certain trade-offs. Yeah, I completely understand. Like, obviously in Panama, yes, I just said it's expensive with certain items. But then on the other hand, like, getting an Uber Black from the city to the old city, I mean, that's $5. In Milan or Miami, that's $50. You have the opportunity to have like maids help at the house that cost a fraction of what they would cost stateside. So that you just have to weigh up what you need essentially.
It's a great standard of living down here in Costa Rica. Down here in Central America. I mean, I know Panama, I've spent quite a bit of time down there. Panama City is first world, as you mentioned there. It's got first world restaurants, roads, cars, infrastructure, everything. I always like to refer to it as mini Miami.
Yes, no, actually, I mean, it's a fantastic place. I mean, literally any type of food that you want, there's a restaurant, from Mongolian to Vietnamese, you name it, they have it. An hour from Panama City, you've got beautiful beaches. So basically you go an hour left to Coronado or an hour up right to El Valle, beautiful mountains. It really does have, quite a few things going for it. And then as I mentioned, they're kind of blessed with having the Panama Canal, which, just generates huge amounts of revenue for the country. So they not too concerned. Like, for example, in other jurisdictions, you break your taillight in your car, you get pulled over, you get fined immediately. There's not really that necessity from other departments or institutions to really tax the citizen or to really come after them for small infractions, because they are blessed with having that huge amount of revenue that comes through year upon year from the canal.
Well, my last question I love to ask everyone: if you inherited $500,000 and had to invest it in business or real estate in Central America, Luigi, what would you do with it and why?
I'd go real estate. Business can be sometimes a bit challenging in the sense where these administrations change, and often they change from left to right and right to left. So you're not quite sure. It's different to other countries where you can get a second term. Yeah, you don't. You get 5 years and then you're gone, type of thing. So it makes it planning a bit difficult. So for me, I'd say it would likely be real estate, and in either Belize, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama. And why I say that is I'm seeing a large interest from North Americans in these jurisdictions for property. It's interest driven primarily by retirees who are realizing that the retirement that they thought they would receive in, say, the USA or Canada is just no longer obtainable. So instead, they're now looking south to be able to get that retirement that they dreamed of. And so this interest has actually led to quite low amounts of property inventory in these 4 jurisdictions. So I would say $500,000 in either purchasing, say, an apartment or a home, or $500,000 investing in a development in these 4 countries. I believe would be quite a solid investment. For example, on the Burgess Caye Island in Belize, just in the last 5 years, I've seen certain developments have had their apartments, their condos, and even home valuations double, if not triple in price from what they originally bought them at.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I don't think I've seen that craziness in some areas of Costa Rica. Not so much kind of all over the country, but especially in the northern Guanacaste area, Nosada and Santa Teresa have just gone insane,
Yeah.
But Luigi, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm going to put all of your details in the description down below. So I think anybody that wants to reach out to you guys at the bank or you personally, I'll leave the details there. And I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, sir.
Oh, fantastic. No, thanks, Rich. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. And look forward to welcoming you down to Panama and actually Belize for the first time. That'd be fantastic to have you over there.
Yeah, I've got to get up there. I think I owe my wife a trip anyway. I've been working like a madman, so I'll take her up to Belize.
Awesome. Well, I mean, second largest barrier reef in the world. It's a lot to see and do. Jungles, snorkeling, you name it. So there's a lot of things to see and do. Yeah.
Sounds beautiful.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Bye. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that podcast there with Luigi from Caye International Bank there in Belize. As I mentioned, I think it's a great opportunity for anyone that's looking to get financing here in Costa Rica or any property in Central America. Remember, all of his contact details are there below. But Caye International Bank, that's actually CAY International Bank in Belize. But yeah, we've got some interesting future people coming on the podcast, guys. I'm going to kind of refocus a little bit. I would say kind of getting some realtors and getting some, some people that are living here in Costa Rica to really get their feedback on the podcast. Also about kind of like, living here in Costa Rica, what to buy, what not to buy, what they like about it, what the shocks were, et cetera, just as I know quite a few people are looking to relocate here in Costa Rica as well. And if there are any people or any topics you'd like me to kind of cover in the future coming podcasts, you can reach out to me, info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. Till next time, guys, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. If you liked it, please give us a good review and spread the word. Thanks very much. Bye.